liked about what Ron was saying at the end there. You know, he was showing.
Çevirmeye çalışıyorum ama belki bir sizin de bir
Tabii bir bakalım belki bir şey de yayınlar yani. Tabii ben yani eviyle ilgili bir yetkim falan yapmadım.
It's just getting so complicated. So, it's the numbers. I don't know. They're
No, that's actually some sort of an activity.
Bottom-up kavramlara inanıyorum. Top-down kavramlara pek inanmıyorum. O yüzden Birleşim Vakfı, TÜBİTAK, hiç kimse alınmasın, kusura bakmasın. Cumhurbaşkanlığı, Başbakanlığı vesaire bakanlar, farklı bakanlıklar hiçbir şeye inancıp birine kapısını çalmamışlık etmesi yaptığımız çalışmalarla ilgili. Bugün ben de gördüm. Bu öyle bir We have Middle East in our focus. It seems like you're doing one cyber article.
Another part of the authority that they give you is the young the main part of the Israeli intelligence community is amazing. So at some point you want to go and release your own capabilities.
exactly. So you're working, as far as I understood, close with the government.
I used to work up.
Hep startup, yeni kurban. Sizde 20-25 yani çok yüksek bir rakam.
nothing is ever as free.
Amazing, yeah.
Sende var dedin işte. Bu mevzu oydu zaten. Onun için bizim böyle bir şey bulabilirsek, şu anda mesela adam gelmiş, devlete bir yazılım satmış, yazılım çıkmış, CD'yi koymuş. Yazılım var mı? Var. Vermişler 400 bin dolar, ortada yazılım mı var?
Okay, I have to take care.
El salla, el sallarmışım kameraya.
Again, if you were so kind enough to continue our discussion from the networking towards here about cyber, I've heard some very interesting debates, so we're open to your questions. Please, Ambassador.
Thanks so much, Evan. Yeah, maybe to help everybody get loosened up a little bit more after coffee, I'll ask the first question. And please, if you have specific people, you please direct your question to them. Otherwise, the questions can be answered by anybody. But I wanted to pick up on a very practical issue that Ram brought up. especially in the context that you were talking about, where cybersecurity isn't paid so much attention to in Turkey. And so that question is, could you elaborate a bit on the dangers of using open Wi-Fi, hotel Wi-Fi? What guidelines would you offer someone who may either be a government official or not, who's just a private citizen in business? What should we be afraid of? And I have a friend who has a cybersecurity company in Estonia, and he never sends emails. He stops emails altogether.
Not sending emails is like telling someone not to breathe. You have to send emails. First of all, if you can, don't use Wi-Fi. But if you must, use a VPN. The simplest way to use a VPN is, surprise, surprise, Facebook has a free VPN. By the way, it's an Israeli company that they bought. And all you have to do is go on Facebook, protect, and then you download a VPN. It's called Onavo VPN. And from this moment on, yes, you'll be surveilled by Facebook, which you already are, but you'll have a VPN, which means at least when you're using public Wi-Fi, it will be much more secured. I do recommend, though, a few practical steps to control your privacy. First of all, always keep your endpoints and mobile devices and computers up to date. That's like, you see, when we speak about hacking, hacking is only possible in your current configuration. If you keep on changing your configuration, for example, if there is a malware on my phone and I'm changing phone, the malware doesn't exist. So change all the time, which is a little hard, but it's a good tip. Second, use two-step authentication on all your accounts. That's the second password that you get when you are getting an SMS when you're putting your password for the first time. Two-step authentication will prevent most phishing attacks. And third, encrypt your phones. If you're using an iPhone, so encryption is by default. If you're using Android, then encrypt your phone. And if you're using a laptop, encrypt your laptop. If it's a Mac, then you have the Mac Vault, which will encrypt it. And if you're using Windows, then Windows 10 has BitLocker, at least in Windows 10 is by default, so just started. And the third, use good malware protection. For iOS, you don't really need malware protection. iOS is pretty good, but do not jailbreak the phones. Do not download apps that are not from the iPhone Store or the Google Play or the Google Store itself. That's a big no-no. Use good malware protection on your phone. Actually, Kaspersky is pretty good. If you're not on the bad side, then use Kaspersky, they're good. I mean, if they're good enough to get stuff on the NSA allegedly, then probably good. Also use, because ransomware is now a big issue, then use anti-ransom protection. There are a lot of free ones. Trend Micro has one, Cybersecurity has one. You just download. The way that they work is this. This is very interesting. They put like what they call breadcrumbs, for example, files that no one is supposed to touch, even not the operating system. And if someone is touching the files and they're not supposed to touch it, it's probably a ransom attack, so they're blocking the ransom from happening. That's pretty much how it's working, so use that. And last but not least, backup. Use backups. And if you have something that you don't want people to know, just don't use it on your phone and don't say it.
Excellent, thank you. Please, Murat.
Hi, this is Murat. Well, thank you very much for the panel. It was quite good. My question is to Ram again this time. I know it's not always true to simplify how hacking works or how hacker organizations work. I'm not talking about state actors. I'm talking about private actors against enterprises. And my question is, if you can simplify the organizations, that the enterprises should basically have more people and more budgets than the hacker groups. So my question is, for example, what would be the training budgets of Anonymous?
Thank you. And could everybody to introduce themselves, in addition to the name of your background? Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name is Murat again. Murat Dosa, I'm coming from Dosa Information Security. I'm working in cybersecurity for more than 20 years now. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure I understand it, so let me see that I repeat it. You're saying in enterprises, what should be the training budget?
Just to be a guideline towards enterprises, I'm asking what is the training budget for a hacker organization?
Oh, first of all, I don't know. I would assume that if it's a hacking organization, then all the budget goes into training. But but here we have to define between two things. First of all, there are courses you can take and teach people how to use the tools for hacking. For example, I don't know, Metasploit, or there are tools for hackers. So you can send them, they will cost between 2,500 euros, and that's more or less the price. And within 3-4 months, you can teach people that have very little knowledge of security on how to hack. But the good hackers, they don't need the courses, because what are really hacking doing? Hackers, they're not developing anything. They are looking at how this works, and they're thinking of how to manipulate it in a way that either the developer hasn't thought about it, or the user is not aware that he's being manipulated. So those are really people with a different way of thinking. I'm not even sure you can train good hackers. I know, like, for example, some of my friends are doing reverse engineering. Reversers, they're called reversers in the community. Reversers, what they do is that they take a software and they realize how it works, and by that they're able to crack it. That's what they're reverse engineering softwares. They haven't been trained anywhere. They've been trained at home since they were kids, breaking stuff all the time. So I cannot really give any good advice on what I would do. Is I would just let them break as much as they can. It comes with training.
Two questions over here, and then please.
My name is Sanem Dina, and I work with the Holland Center, which is a non-governmental organization that's in the US and in Istanbul, and we work a lot with civil society in the Middle East, North Africa, in Turkey, in the US. So my question is regarding that, regarding civil society, and I feel like that's a discussion that's usually missed out on in cybersecurity discussions. Ron said earlier that governments have taken their gloves off, and in many cases the gloves are off against government's own citizens and groups within government that are dissidents that the government doesn't like. Even in certain cases, according to several recent New York Times news stories, the Mexican government, for example, has targeted activists that are trying to lobby the government for a tax on soda, on soda that contains, that's high in sugar content. So things as simple as this. So the general question, I guess, is, in this world where the governments have taken their gloves off, including governments that are very close to here, Islam, other governments in the Middle East and so on. What kind of responsibility do people on the panel feel falls on, for example, supranational bodies, or on people like ourselves who are kind of leading the field in this? Can the civil society, transnational civil society, rely on, let's say, these supranational actors to put checks and balances on private companies who are, for example, exporting the software that the governments are using to surveil their civil society, or to target their civil society?
Anybody want to take that one?
I'm assuming this was for the whole panel, right?
It is. Okay, I'll direct it to, because I was talking to Ron over the break, I would love to hear from the NATO panelists.
So perhaps I can get the ball rolling and try to answer your question, and then perhaps our colleague from Tallinn also might want to weigh in, particularly in the debate on the kind of international norms and sort of open, secure cyberspace that I reflected from. Which, NATO, we're not a norm-setting organisation, so firstly. Secondly, when it comes to the activities of the allies, I think we ought to know that the alliance and NATO, the organisation that supports the 29 allies, has a very specific role when it comes to cyber defence, which I tried to articulate. Not try to delegitimise your concerns or your point, which is very, very valid, but rather to say that when it comes to our our role, if you like. We have no tools like, for example, the European Union, which makes legislation. When it comes to NATO, we have we're a consensus-driven organisation. We work at the level of agreement of 29 sovereign nations. So, in that respect, we have a limited set of tools at our disposal, which are very narrowly focused in a quite specific mandate. Having said that, we do follow the work of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the UN group of governmental experts, and all the different developments that are going on in the international sphere about fostering an open, secure, and transparent cyberspace. So, having said that, I think we recognise the importance of cyberspace for human development, for societal growth, for economic growth. We talked about the economic benefits that are there, and indeed societal benefits. But in terms of what we do, we have sort of quite a limited mandate, limited set of responsibilities. But where we see there are international developments, particularly in the UN, and that's something that we do recognise. And indeed, in our statement from the Warsaw Summit, our allies were very happy to note and to reflect upon the progress we've made at the UN, particularly in regards to kind of norms of state behaviour, all of these kind of things. But in comparison to, I know the data protection regime was mentioned by Iran that's going on in the European Union. We don't have any we don't set legislation in that regard, so we don't have any enforcement powers, and it's not the kind of the sort of space that NATO works as an organisation that acts as kind of how I would characterise it as a sort of interoperability layer between 29 sovereign nations.
Sim, I don't know if you have stuff to add on the NATO front, but also with your think tank hat on, maybe you could help us think through what might be options out there to bring civil society together in this work.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the thought-provoking question. Now, if I were a lawyer, I would be able to answer in 2 words. It depends. But being outside NATO commands and hence with some liberty to speculate, I would say it's really important since it's impossible for any nation to go alone, and it's very hard to build the international consensus. What could be the norms and what could be, I would say, the best practice, because every nation is sovereign. Is sovereign in its decisions, and we need to really take that into account. I think the Estonian approach is really to be very open, the whole 9 yards. So when it comes to norms, new regulations, there is a lot of consulting including the private sector, with the activists. I recall there was a case a few years ago. I think it was called ACTA, so there was a proposal on the European level to impose some new standards, and the Estonian community, cyber defense community, and the civil society especially, they opposed that, and then therefore the government later basically changed the course. However, I would therefore say it really begins with some nations showing the lead as to what could be the best practice, how it really shows in their overall performance, in their resilience, and it takes years to achieve any tangible progress, but I guess that could be a way forward. As I mentioned, it's really impossible or very, very difficult to build an international approach, an international consensus. As soon as you lay down some rules of the game, then you can assume that perhaps those who don't join this new consensus might be actually abusing those rules against those who wish for the general good. So yeah, it's a very good question, sir. It's very thought-provoking. I don't have a very quick answer to that, but really showing leadership and starting from one nation would be a way forward.
Sir?
My name is Felix Schmidt from the German Friedrich Ebert Foundation. My question would be addressed mainly to our NATO friends, Dina and Sim, but also maybe for a Turkish perspective to Minhaj. It's related to the decision by the Turkish government to purchase the Russian missile defense system, the S-400. And also, Mr. Stoltenberg has said there's no problem for the nation, for Turkey to purchase this and then integrate it into the national defense system. But I wonder, and I might sound naive, whether in terms of cybersecurity, this is not creating a big sort of challenge for the NATO system, that you would suddenly have a Russian defense system, which also certainly has a lot of sort of cyber elements in the whole system, how to make sure that there is no leakage between the two systems. This sounds to me very complicated to have a Russian and as a NATO member, a Russian missile defense system in the own army. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Okay, it's a very interesting question, thank you. I should probably preface my attempt at a response by just noting I'm not an expert in missile defense systems, but I would say, harking back to the end of the days of the Cold War, there were other instances where Soviet military equipment was integrated into allies. I'm thinking particularly of fighter aircraft from East Germany that were part of the German Air Force, for example. So this is not necessarily without precedent, and to again go back to my response to the previous question, we are an alliance of 29 sovereign nations. We can't tell allies what to do, what to buy, where to buy it from. However, we do have a very well set out system of capability, a framework to encourage capability development, and this is called the NATO Defence Planning Process, which may be familiar to one or two of you around the table, and it's a means by which we can understand the different capabilities in each ally that have been earmarked or dedicated to NATO operations and missions, to the collective aspect of the alliance. And so within these capability targets, there are aspects relating to cyber defence. I mentioned in 2013 we developed a first set of capability targets. These are things like create a national strategy, set up a military incident response team, establish training and education and exercise programs. These have been refreshed last year, and within these capability targets there is quite a portion of it dedicated on the technical side to implementing different types of technical measures. For those of you from industry, what we're talking about here is a sort of a NATO version of an information security management standard, perhaps like the ISO 27000 framework that is very well known in industry as a global set of good practices, good things to do in cybersecurity and information security. So the NATO sort of version of that that's applicable within this capability development process, and that's allies have committed to implement certain steps and to reach a certain degree of maturity implemented in that by a certain point in time. So the date is different. Each ally gets to sort of have a discussion with its peers, with the other 28 countries, about when to deliver certain parts of these capability targets. And that, I think, really is the response to the question in terms of this sort of standard, if you like. It's not really a standard, but it's a sort of a set of commitments that the ally has signed up to, will be the thing that can enable the integration of these different systems, military systems, air defense systems, aircraft, ships, whatever types of capabilities that is out there, and to create a kind of common level of interoperability, if you like. So I think that would be the question in terms of what degree of concern there is potentially from others about how different types of military equipment are being integrated. There is a common sort of framework by which each ally needs to do certain things that everyone has to abide by. But again, within NATO we don't set legislation, we don't have any formal enforcement means to require a certain country to do a certain thing. We are a consensus-driven organisation, and then every ally is up to them what they decide to purchase.
Can I just nudge you a tiny bit on that one, because Greece has had S-300s for a while, right? 10 years ago or so about that. Were there any cyber-related negative consequences of that? Or can you not talk about it if there were? Or are you saying everything is okay?
Well, I think, you know, there's, I don't know the case of the S-300s in detail, nor as I've said, I'm an expert on the S-400s, but I think in general, and this perhaps goes back to the discussion on the domain. You know, what we're trying to do with this recognition of cyberspace and domain and the significant work that's now underway is to make sure that from the sort of end to end, right from the consultation and consultation networks that work in the headquarters that we use to do that consensus, to drive that consensus building across 29 countries at the political level, right all the way through to the very tactical air defense systems, to make sure that's all operating on a single kind of cybersecurity baseline and all integrated. So we don't precisely have weak spots where there are, perhaps from an operational perspective, something that's not secured as it should be, because, you know, to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld, you don't know what you don't know. And in this modern day and age, as we've heard, you know, cyber is such an integral part of many different types of technology, not just for the military, for defense and security, but anything. I mean, there's you know, internet-connected fridges, kettles, all sorts of things. So we, you know, it's our sort of version of trying to implement that within the scope and the mandate of what we do in terms of defense and security.
Well, we don't have missile defense on our work menu as of yet, so I can only speak in my personal capacity. Well, in Estonia, we strongly believe in the alliance and in the commitments to the alliance, and therefore, you know, it takes two to tango. It makes me wonder, why would Russia want to actually transfer some of its flagship technology to an alliance country? Because if you think about it, if you want to do missile defense, you need to know how to operate the missile, and vice versa. So this is actually an old Chinese saying that no, we're an opponent, and it's you know, interesting to see that Russia wants to transfer its technology to the alliance. Thank you.
Please, yeah.
I cannot maybe provide a Turkish perspective, but maybe a cyber perspective, because I see the issue, a connectivity issue, and cyber is, I think, is central. We have to remember two important developments. One is, I think, last year, when Germany took back the Patriot missiles from Turkey, and according to some news reports, it's because of some breach, some cyber breach to the system. And the second issue is the Turkish government intended to buy Chinese different missile system, but one of the factors that NATO opposed at the time is, again, some cyber concerns. And I'm not an expert, but regarding the S-300s, they are located in Crete, and they are not connected to the NATO defense system. Thanks.
Yeah. My name is Ilter Duran. I'm a university professor. I have a series of short questions. The first one, are there differences between the way the security concern is conceptualized by the government and by business, which renders their cooperation different? They look at it as very different phenomena, number one. But then, this panel, understandably, has been conceptualized as cybersecurity against evil forces trying to inflict harm on you. I mean, there's another element of security which we have overlooked, and it's the people in the cybersecurity business themselves. Are they reliable? I mean, this question was prompted by the fact that a telephone conversation between our president and his children was recorded publicly because apparently the designers deliberately left a penetrable or weak spot in the program so that their friends, etc., could actually break into the system. So this also is an important maybe element which may constitute the topic of yet another panel, but I thought maybe some of the members of the panel might want to address it. And thirdly, let me just reiterate what has been said by the lady from the Hollins Foundation, and that is Holly Center, and that is, we cannot underestimate the cybersecurity problem of the citizen against the government. And this is such a grave danger to the democratic way of life that it has to be addressed very, very seriously. And we should not leave it just out of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to start?
First of all, I was thinking about the privacy issue, and I'm looking at your face and how concerned you are. I would like to give you an answer, which is quite a serious one. First of all, I think that we are all entitled for the right to privacy, and we should be educated to demand this right, and people should know how their right is being used or abused, whether by corporations and governments. I think that what Europe is doing with GDPR is a very, very important step, and it will create a difference. And I do think that we are still in the process of learning the fine balance between security and privacy, and that is a question of norm and ethics. Regardless, citizens can make the life of the government much harder with just very simple knowledge, going back to how people will be privacy aware. But I agree with you. It's a concerning issue. Professor, to your question, the straightforward answer will be no. We conceptualize. First of all, we have to think about it. The people who are responsible for managing IT risk in most organizations are either security or IT people that move from system to security. They're security people. We speak the same language. What is the language? We speak the language of protecting confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility of data and data systems. The difference would be not in the conceptualization of the threats, but in the impact of the threats, whether they will materialize. This is where the difference is, because if we're speaking about an airline, then you could maybe crash a plane, but when you speak about a government, maybe the impact will be freedom to information or privacy. But the ways of penetrating the systems, the potential impacts, in technical terms, it's the same thing. Unless, and there's one big exception, we're speaking about legacy systems, for example, a mainframe at a bank, or a system that was specifically designed in a specific organization. There, the vulnerabilities will be different, but the whole idea, everything around it will be more or less the same. And of course, ammunition systems, which are built in a different way. So I don't see the difference in the conceptualization of the threat. I do see the problem why they don't share information is because we haven't built the right mechanisms for sharing information, and even in the diplomatic terms, the TCBMs, the trust and confidence building measures, and the ability to share information, and that you would know that the information that you share about yourself will not be used against you. Because what is information that I share about myself? It's where I'm vulnerable. And I need to make sure that if I'm sharing information about who I'm vulnerable, no one will take advantage of it. So we need to create a trusted environment of sharing information. Now, you've touched a very, very delicate point, and this is what we call the technological insider. This is the system administrator or the programmer or the people that really have all the access and they can do whatever they want. And on one hand, we need to trust them. And on the other hand, we need to give them freedom to develop and to manage the systems, because otherwise we will not have managed systems and we will not have proper development. We will stop them just because we don't trust them. It's a problem, I can tell you that. What do we do? Like everything in cybersecurity, defense should be in layers, meaning there are a lot of things that we do. There isn't just one control, there are like 20 controls that we put. For example, we would do privileged administration management. Every administrative or privileged access to every system will be monitored. Some things will require 2 people to make a difference. For example, if you want to create a change in the SWIFT network, the the banking network, you would need 2 tokens, physical tokens. You would have, for example, anomaly detection systems. You would have deception systems. You would have a lot of things that are controls over controls, but if someone is, like again, Snowden, is determined, is knowledgeable, highly knowledgeable, and he knows how the systems are built, then there's nothing you can do. So it goes back to who are the people, then we put human controls. For example, we make sure that the people who come in and work for us, they don't have bad intention. We put special emphasis on people that have problems. For example, if they are close to money, and they have problems at home, or they got in, I don't know, they got in trouble because they were gambling and now they owe the black market money, then we try to spot that as early as we can. But I do agree with you. This is the #1 problem that we have in cybersecurity today, what we call the technological insider. The privileged users, and we are slowly finding ways in how to manage it in a proper way without putting too much burden and still keeping the trust that we need with these people.
I'm Suvarda, I'm an assistant professor of international relations. I would like to direct my question to Mihaj and also maybe representatives from NATO. To what extent does Turkey's national cybersecurity strategy and the definition of cyber terror converge or differ from other NATO members? And does Turkey accept the applicability of international norms and laws to cyberspace? And does Turkey also claim sovereignty in internet places like Russia and China? And my final question is directed specifically to Mihaj. What is the relationship of IELTS team, which is commonly referred as Turkey's first cyberspace army, with the Turkish state?
Our professors are always like this. About the definition of cyber terror, I don't think Turkish state has a clear definition of cyber terror. But I think the government sees it as an integral part of the definition of terrorism. We have 2 cybersecurity strategies. The last one was announced nearly 2 years ago, but we haven't seen any solid steps in order to executing the goals and aims announced in the strategy. There hasn't been yet any applicable international laws and regulations. There has been serious efforts to have one, especially in Tallinn. The CCDCOE has been put so much effort to have a Tallinn manual. Tallinn Manual 2.0 is, of course, a guiding book for all the policymakers and IR professionals. So what Turkey should do in this process for me is to take part into the international discussions as much as it can. But I'm not sure the capacity of Foreign Ministry to involve these discussions. Yes, Turkish army declared cybersecurity as a domain of war, and if anyone damages the interests of Turkish state, they will retaliate it. But the concepts and doctrines are not open to public, so we don't know how the Turkish army is, what are the doctrines and conceptual structure of Turkish generals about cyberspace. We don't know that. But the name is telling so much things. The name of the unit that involves in cyberspace in Turkish army is cyber defense. So officially we have no offensive policies at this policy level. I will be candid, there is no official organic relation with any hacker group to the states. This is to my knowledge. Thank you.
I don't want to ruin the party. I don't know a lot about the Turkish cyber policy, but I would argue that there is no cyber terror. There is no such thing. Maybe there will be, but to date, putting clips on YouTube by ISIS to getting people to be afraid is not terror. I'm talking terror like buses exploding, but doing that through cyberspace. So there is no cyber terror because you need a lot of knowledge and a lot of time and usually persistence, which terror organizations just do not have. Maybe they will have it now because the NSA have lost some of their tools, so now nation-state tools are in the hands of private enterprises and terrorist organizations. So maybe now there is a window for terrorist organizations to use those tools to inflict damage. But generally, I haven't seen almost any terrorist organization using cyberspace to inflict any damage. And so I would just argue that there is no such thing as cyber terror, and that's my only comment.
Hi everyone, my name is Onurkan. I am coming from Global. Today we are talking about some cyber defense risk and potential attacks. And basically we can give the example we are already talking, Petya and WannaCry. But the hackers using to, the static signatures, the attacks. And many companies said, okay, we are detection and we can block this type of attacks. And many companies always say we can block. When the attacks launching in the world, and we already saw many companies cannot detect, and many government and many companies affected this type of attacks. My question, Mr. Ram, is it government or company strategy or different?
You're speaking about not Petya and Petya attacks?
Petya and ransomware, both.
Well, for those who don't remember, WannaCry was the ransomware attack that affected hundreds of thousands of computers around, it was May. And NotPetya was the attack that started in Ukraine and affected the Ukrainians, say, about 1 million computers, and tens of multinational companies worldwide, from Merck to Reckitt Benckiser to Mondelez, Maersk, of course. Maersk was down for almost a month, their internal network. And so we do know, that behind WannaCry is probably North Korea. It wasn't so successful. I think we only managed to raise about $150,000 from ransomware, which is a joke. I mean, you inflict damage to 100,000 computers in the world, and what you make is $1 per computer. Not very smart. NotPetya has done something that was a little bit more sophisticated. It was a destructive malware. What does it mean? It's a malware that spreads very fast. It looks like a ransomware, but it's not a ransomware. All it does, it's deleting computers and servers. Now, you might say, okay, what's the big problem about deleting a computer? But if you delete, let's say, 2,000 servers and 8,000 computers to Reckitt Benckiser, they cannot sell it. They cannot move logistics from one place to another. That means that they're losing 2% of their quarterly sales. That's equal to $250,000. Now, if you look at, we've asked ourselves, who can create such a complex attack? It is a complex attack because it's not that it happens one day. You have to collect intelligence in the networks of those companies, and you have, we know that they have been there for over 2 months within the networks of the companies. I cannot really say for sure what's the motivation behind it, so therefore I cannot really pinpoint who I think that it was, but it looks like the work of a nation-state actors. We only know about such attacks that came and that were done by nation states. For example, Iran, that's the way they attacked Saudi Aramco in 2013, and that's the way that North Korea attacked the banks and television stations in 2012 in South Korea, and that's the way that Iran was attacking in Las Vegas Sands Corporation Casino in 2014. So it's a method of operation of nation states. Can we say for sure? That's one of the problems. We cannot attribute. And I'm sure that there are intelligence services that do know who did it, but they will never share with us what they know. So this is the conflict, again, we're speaking about the tension between privacy and policy and security. There's also a tension between security and the security of intelligence sources for the benefit of the security of the entire nation or the entire world, for that matter. But here's another thing that we should discuss. Those attacks could have been, to a certain extent, prevented. They could have been prevented by better network hygiene if people were following the advisories that Microsoft released in March. They would have been prevented. If intelligence services would have told us that someone has the intent to do it and would tip the companies, which is what they should do, privately, discreetly, then they could have been prevented. And of course, now we should also look in the eyes of those companies and ask them what really happened and what are the lessons that we can learn from damaging the #1 shipping company in the world for a month, and what can we learn and what can other companies do to improve their cybersecurity, because that's a very, very, very extreme scenario.
I think we're up to our last question, I believe, unless someone else has a burning one, but that's Murat. You have your hand up. Yeah, or somebody else? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Before asking my question, let me just give a little background on Open Data Initiative. Open Data is basically governments share their unrestricted public data openly to anyone. It's basically that data is used by researchers or private entities either to solve problems or create some new services, like a transportation service, for example, because all the data required to do research is in the open data. And Open Data Initiative is very widely used in Europe, as far as I know. Estonia has even a portal for whole country to access all the open data available. But unfortunately, some local governments, especially in my country, when you go and ask the governments, they use cybersecurity or cybersecurity risks and threats as an excuse not to publicize the data. So I would like to hear panel's opinion on this, and also if you have any previous expertise on how we can create assurance against government officials so that they can feel comfortable and make that data open, of course, anonymous as well. Thank you.
So, spicy question and a great one that kind of leads from what you were talking about at the end, about this tension between non-disclosure or disclosure, sort of the reverse of that question. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Securitizing non-security.
Okay.
I don't want to give you
Yeah, great.
I mean, I'll provide you an answer really from NATO's perspective, because we don't have any sort of open data initiatives. What I would say though is that we recognise that a lot of the innovation comes from availability of data, and particularly when it comes to cybersecurity products and services, things that industry may produce to support the enhancement and improvement of cyber defences for the alliance. And then, potentially, as actually professors remark, the use of threat assessment as a kind of not an excuse but a justification for other types of other activities, other decisions. I think it's up to the country to decide what justification they use, but at the same time, it reflects the importance of considering carefully your threat and risk assessment. What is it you're trying to protect? What resources you're able to apply to reduce to the extent possible those those risks based on consideration of threats. So you're really interested in, as we are within NATO, the sort of high-end nation states, the sort of 20% that can't be dealt with from the likes of the basic cyber hygiene and norms indicated earlier on. So I think the importance of giving serious attention and taking a serious measured and rational approach to the consideration of cybersecurity threat assessment is part of the answer, I'd argue, but I can't comment on the sort of political aspects of that, I'm afraid.
Generally, my thought is that most information should be out in the open. The reason is that, first of all, people don't read it. I mean, just look at the amount of information that WikiLeaks has released. Did anybody go into WikiLeaks to see what's in there? I mean, you can only maybe do some big data analysis, but people don't read it. And the second thing is that the more the information is out in the open, the more you can validate that the processes that have been done to put this information out in the open are okay. So it's a political question. But I think that, yes, I mean, we see, at least our government we have the Freedom of Information Act, and a lot of government information is just being out there in the open. And this goes back to what you don't want to have out in the open. Of course, things that are related to national security or to the privacy of the citizens should not be out in the open for obvious reasons. But all the rest, absolutely. But then you will have a different problem. You will move from big data analysis to huge data analysis. How do you make sense out of so much information that's out there and make something actionable for the benefit of the citizens? That's a question that I don't know how to answer.
The lack of data and information created an ambiguous environment, and this ambiguity can be used by the states as if they are doing so much, but actually they don't do anything. So this may be commented as constructive ambiguity for the cyber states. It depends on the culture, I think, of the society, of the country, because when we look at the budgets of cyber forces, many countries are comfortable to announce it to the rest of the world. For example, you can find on the web the details of budget to cyberspace operations, even to the offensive cyber operations of American Air Forces. You can find this data online. However, in Turkey, you cannot find any data regarding budget, regarding money allocated to any kind of military unit is completely a mystery for us.
One last comment from me, from the non-cyber realm, but just from classified information realm, reinforcing your point about the more information out there, the better. In my experience, the difference between top secret bit of information and, let's say, just a confidential piece is often minuscule. It may have to do with the source or a specific operation. But otherwise, in my experience over 23 years, what I would see in a highly classified setting was often something we were already talking about publicly. But it's just the confirmation. And with WikiLeaks, it's been great for me because I was accused of so many things in my government life, especially in the case of Georgia. Maybe I encouraged the Georgians to go to war. When my cables got WikiLeaks, people could see the truth. And what I was saying in public was what I was saying in private. So the more information that's out there, the better. Generally, transparency's got to be a good thing, right? Except when there are, again, individual operations or people whose identities are threatened because they've been helping a government in an intelligence operation. Okay, that needs to be top secret. That's just my opinion, but I just wanted to say, for me, and I'm going to turn it over to Evan, this has been fantastic. My brain stretched throughout this day. Thanks for your openness, your thoughtfulness, I mean, the questions, the answers. I feel like I've gone through a semester university seminar, and I hope everybody feels the same way.
Again, I'd like to end on a note. I'd like to again thank our hosts and supporters for their generous help. Thank you to all the panelists and your valuable insights. And one last note, we have complementary TPQ issues, take whichever you like. And thank you for your time.